What's up, everyone? I'm Never a Dull Moment, and today we're taking a look at the Honda Shadow Synthwave Edition. Just kidding, this is a Honda Pacific Coast. This is a 1994 model. And these are a very weird and unique bike. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you've already seen Fort Nine's video. He did a great job kind of explaining what this bike was about. But the long and the short of it is that this is a experiment that Honda did. They only made it for about 8 years. Didn't sell all that well, about 14,000 units in total. It shares an engine. I haven't completely verified this, but I believe that it shares the 800cc engine from the Honda Shadow, and it's a very unique bike. There's just nothing that looks quite like it. Let's go ahead and get into some of the unique features. Well, first of all, there's the fairings that cover, literally everything on the bike, all the way down to the handlebars. Even the wheels have fairings on them. Very unique design choice. Some people will tell you that this is because of trying to appeal to car drivers. I don't know that that's specifically true, but part of the reason that they did this was to kind of showcase how reliable Honda bikes are. The idea of not having everything out in the open kind of portrayed this message that the bike was going to be really reliable. You wouldn't have to be wrenching on it on the weekends and always, taking it apart and everything. They were trying to portray this message that it was a really solid bike and also give you the benefit of really good weather protection, which we'll get into later. The other feature that this bike has that's very unique is the huge trunk. Yeah, big old trunk back here. It's a waterproof trunk. It's got plenty of storage capacity. So some examples of things you could put in here. I'm gonna take my gloves off because it's kind of warm. An example of some things you could put in here. You could do 2 12-packs of beer and chuck them in there. You could do a 12-pack of beer and a helmet. You could do a helmet and all of your riding gear. You could do a helmet and a backpack. Or if you're in university, you could probably fit all of your textbooks and all the beer that you need for the night. Really solid build quality in this thing. Just so you are aware, this is a motorcycle, so it does have a shifter and everything. It's manual. It looks like a scooter, but it is a motorcycle. And we do have a center stand and a kickstand, which is a very nice addition. Of course, you got your passenger pegs and really comfortable passenger accommodations. The other nice little tidbit that we have here is that you do have an adjustment for your idle speed, which can come in real handy. And then your choke is up here. But that's kind of all your main hallmark features. You do have a little side pocket over here for small, if you want to throw your wallet in there or whatever, which would be kind of handy. That's pretty much about it. I won't ramble too much. We'll go ahead and hop on this guy. Now, at the time being, I do have this bike listed for sale. So I will leave a link to that in the description. But chances are by the time you're watching this, it has been sold, or you just aren't even in my area, but feel free to check that out. I did detail this bike recently, so it does look, pretty good considering the year. But yeah, enough rambling. Let's go ahead and hop on this guy. Couple of performance figures to kick things off is that this bike does have, like I said, 800cc engine. It's pushing at about 55 horsepower, a little less than 50 foot-pounds of torque. 0 to 60 is at about 6 seconds. Claimed weight is 640 pounds wet. So, not a light bike. But this bike is, I wouldn't call it nimble, I wouldn't call it flickable, but it's actually, it handles, shockingly well given its size. A big reason for those traits is that the gas tank is actually, this is a fake gas tank. The gas tank is located lower down, so you keep the weight lower. And the wheels are actually a little bit small, given the size of this bike, so it kind of keeps the handling a little bit more, a little bit more flickable than you'd expect. We're going to go ahead and hop on the main road here and give it a ride. Technically, by classification, this would be considered a sport touring bike. I would say you could definitely do some touring on this. I would not say that this is a sport touring specifically. I think that's just kind of the nearest category you could shove this into. You know, by all technical standards, this bike is kind of underpowered for what it is. It's got enough power to get up on the freeway and be comfortable there, but it's not fast. I also wouldn't really call this a beginner bike. It's not because it's, you know, it's an 800, oh, it's a big engine. It's really more because of the weight, and because this bike just has enough quirks, and you know, it's different enough from a lot of other stuff to where I just wouldn't say it's great if you're just getting into riding. Close my visor there. I mean, you could start on this bike. I think it's doable. If you can start on a Harley, you could start on this. But just in terms of my personal recommendation, I'd probably get something else first. But then again, if you really want to own one of these, you know, they're getting hard to find. For a while, I bought the only one that was actively for sale in my state, just to give you an idea of the availability. But that, of course, varies on where you live. Another little quirk that this bike has is that the clutch is hydraulic, which is a bit of a unique feature. It's kind of, it was weird for me to get used to because there's just not a lot of feel. You know, rather than a more standard clutch setup where you have you actually have a cable, you kind of just have to you know, take a mental note of where the clutch grab point is, because you can't feel it happening. Let's see here. This bike is slow enough to where I don't really want to chance it with there we go, that was a green light. Slow enough where I don't want to chance it with you know, merging and taking a close call. Didn't quite get up to 60 there. It doesn't feel, you know, like, it doesn't feel horribly slow. I feel, you know, it's faster than, you know, most of your cars. It's always something I like to come back to, is just comparing to cars, like, because people say slow bike, but, you know, it's only slow by virtue of it being a motorcycle, not by, you know, all vehicles, which I understand, but I like to make that comparison. I think it's valid. Give this guy a wave. And we do have dual disc brakes up front, single disc in the rear, and also shaft drive, which is interesting. That makes it very low on the maintenance front in terms of no chain to worry about, and really just adds to this bike's ethos as a very, you know, reliable, low wrenching kind of machine. You know, even after all these years, it still feels like a Honda. It's very well balanced. Really not difficult to get used to, honestly. Once you get over the little quirks, the size, the weight, the hydraulic clutch, I mean, it's very comfortable to get on. We do have a lot of wind out today. Little quirk with being in Colorado Springs is that you would get a lot of wind, and there's no real telling when you'll hit a huge gust. There we go. It's up to about 55. Keep within the law, so not too bad on acceleration. For a bike of its size, it's really not horrible. It's actually kind of comparable to some Harleys in terms of, I think it's actually very similar in terms of overall specs to a Harley Sportster in terms of weight and power. I don't know a ton about the differences. I can smell skunk. At least I think it's skunk. I do live in Colorado. Yeah, so it goes through turns pretty alright. You know, given its size, I feel pretty comfortable slugging this thing around. Definitely requires a little bit more effort than, you know, like my CB500F. But, you know, like I said, once you get the feel for it, it's not hard to chuck it around. Absorbs bumps very well. Suspension is definitely set up to be more easygoing, soft, compliant. So it's, I mean, it's a really great bike if you're just looking for something to have, you know, either maybe let's say you're older and you don't want something that's really hardcore, or if you're just looking for a daily commuter bike, you want something that's legitimately practical to use and not be uncomfortable on. It's also great for 2-up riding. I've done 2-up on this bike a couple of times, and yeah, I mean, it's really a huge selling point. Very, very comfortable. The one downside is when you have all this wind protection and all this, you know, this big bike on a nice warm day, is that you don't really get the wind cooling you off so much. You got to factor that in. It can be a little bit less fun because it's blocking out all the wind, which is great in the winter or great when you're on like a long highway trip, but just bopping around town, you might just want to pull that windshield off. I do really like the gauge cluster on this bike, just in terms of like a style exercise, really. It looks, so much of this bike kind of looks like a Honda Accord. It looks very much like that, see if I can get hopefully you can see the gauges all right here, but it's just such a unique style. You know, it's got those blocky indicators for like your neutral and your high beam. There's one for the kickstand. You know, all your key features. You got the little boxes for your fuel and coolant temperature, and then just like your, you know, really automotive style tachometer and speedometer, which is so unique for something like this. Turn signal is also really big, blocky. It looks very much 80s style, and I'm just a fan of that. I think the 80s style kind of made a comeback, and a lot of people just realized how cool that, you know, angular look is. And that's a lot of what drew me to this bike. That, and it's just so quirky and different. And in terms of riding position, very, very comfortable. The seat height on this is about 30 inches, so it's I think it's actually, it might be a little bit lower than that. I'll have to correct myself. It's fairly low. It feels lower than the CB500. If I stand up normally, I got a good amount of space above the bike. So it's a low seat height, but the handlebars are nice and high up. You don't have to, you know, bend over or anything. Let's see what I can do with this corner. Get some lean. Yeah, you can throw it into turns. It's a matter of the rider, not the bike. Get up to freeway speed. There we go. To 65. And we're cruising along. Pretty comfortable. Really, I mean, it's with a big bike like this, it's, you know, it's got the weight, it's got the size, it's got the fairings. It could just, you know, chomp up miles like this. This is really what it's designed for, and it's such a comfortable experience. Something I wanted to do is, I'm going to warn you, if you're wearing headphones right now, you probably want to turn down your volume, but I wanted to show you what it's like, just the difference that this windshield makes. So I'm gonna put my head above the windshield, and I'm gonna crack my visor. This is above the windshield. This is what it sounds like above the windshield. And if I go down here, under the windshield just a little bit, I'm just tucking down a little bit, that's the sound that you're dealing with. That's the difference that this windscreen makes, and it's absolutely amazing. Like, you don't even need earplugs on this bike, because the engine's quiet, and the windscreen and the aerodynamics of this bike just, you know, it's dead silent. Even if it's like raining, you won't even feel the rain until you come to a stop. It's really something. I missed that guy's wave. And then you kind of ease into the stop, and it actually gets louder. And because we're, you know, like I said, we've got a pretty heavy winds today. But even with all that, I mean, it's dead quiet. Dead quiet. Really amazing stuff. Part of that even just comes down to like the design of the mirrors and everything. It's you know, all made to be so comfortable and so, you know, really ahead of its time in terms of that engineering. That's you know, the aerodynamics and the quietness of a bike is, you know, and even in cars, like electric cars, they have to redesign a lot of stuff to get that volume down. And Honda, you know, just they were way ahead of their time with designing something like this that just had that, you know, super comfy experience. This road could be kind of a mixed bag in terms of you know, whether or not it's fun and easy going, or if it's stop and go traffic. So we'll have to play it by ear and see how that feels. But it's not too bad today. Another point about aerodynamics, I wanted to say, my hands are pretty much shielded from the wind entirely until I get to about here. And then after that I can feel the wind. But pretty much there's like, you know, anywhere there's fairing, you have to move your hand out about, you know, maybe 8 inches before you actually feel the wind. So that's really nice. You know, when you're on the road at, you know, for long periods of time. Our leg guy could have stopped a little bit sooner. Could be a little bit more of a following distance, but that's no problem. I'm a very safe rider. I like to try and minimize risk as much as I can, keep a good following distance. So I'm kind of picky about some other people, but that's just me. Yeah, it looks like we're in kind of a bit of a yam here, a bit of a traffic yam. But it might clear up down the way. If you didn't know, this bike is liquid cooled, but it's also carbureted, which is kind of like I would say that's kind of a minus for it, because when it comes to, you know, like zero or low maintenance bike, carburetors, you know, if you're riding them a lot, they're gonna, or even if you're not, even if you let them sit, you're gonna have to get in there and clean out the carburetors. And there are, with all the fairings on this bike, it is a bit of a process. It's not, it's more that it's a time-consuming thing. I don't think it's extremely difficult to work on this bike. As long as you got a shop manual, you have some good guides online, you can do it yourself if you're comfortable working on motorcycles. But it is, you know, if you're going to take it to a shop, that cost will add up a little bit. It's just relaxing to ride. It's not, it's so easy going. It eats up the little road imperfections, and it's quiet. It's a meditative riding experience. It's the motorcycle for yoga instructors. If there were such a thing. There is only 5 gears in this bike, which can be a little bit confusing. The gearing is very long, because like I said, it's not a sport bike at all. Just meant to, you know, you kind of just throw it into a gear, you rev all the way out, and you switch up to the next one, and that's how you ride this. Which is kind of a positive, because, you know, again, it just contributes to the relaxed nature of everything. What else do I want to say? I mean, just in general, I don't have like a ton to you know, add about this bike. It's just, it's comfortable. It's good for eating up miles. It makes you want to go places. It's got a very unique style. This is a bike for extroverts, or people that are just really interested in, you know, the history, or, you know, rare models. I've had a lot of people, so even people that don't even ride, you know, it doesn't take a genius to realize that this is not how most motorcycles look. And that draws a lot of attention. You know, a lot of people have asked me, you know, what is this? Who makes this bike? What, you know, when was this made? What am I missing? Because even people that are into motorcycles, you know, at least if they haven't seen Fort 9's video, they probably don't know what bike this is. They probably have no idea what this thing is doing on the streets. So you get a lot of questions about it. It's a, you know, really an interesting thing, even just to, you know, park outside of a bar and chat about. It's great to, you know, if you've got a primary bike that you love riding around and you want to just get something else for the weekends, or vice versa, if you want to do, you know, commute on this all the time. Really a great second bike. I would keep this bike, but I'm more into buying and, you know, fixing and reselling. But if it weren't for that, I mean, I'd love to keep this thing in my stable. Keep the CB500F. Those are the two bikes I could see holding on to for some time, because they both just have their own functions. I'm realizing that I've been so relaxed and you know, in the moment on this bike. I just don't have a lot to say. I'm not, I mean, I didn't plan this. I can usually flip on the camera and you know, fill up 30 to 60 minutes of content, but yeah, I really like this bike. It's really fun. If you see one in your area, I would definitely give it a look. You know, bikes at this age, usually you got to do some work to them. This one's in pretty solid shape. You know, runs and rides good. I will say there's this little panel that's a little bit loose. Could probably use some fixing. But other than that, I mean, it's a solid bike. I'd be surprised if these didn't appreciate it, at least a little bit more over time, because they're a really unique piece of history, and there's just nothing else like them. But with that all said, I think I'm just going to sign off. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see myself and a friend ramble about motorcycles at length, you can feel free to check out my Bikes and Beers podcast. I try and upload those about once a week, once every other week. But yeah, it's the Honda Pacific Coast. If you want a comfy bike that'll get you a lot of double takes, this is probably the one for you. I've been Never a Dull Moment, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.